So who do we have here?
Well, Shea was the eighth spot, so how about we go to the seventh spot?
That sounds
Um,
even better, to be honest.
right? Yeah, we're moving on up. Shea at number eight. That actually made a lot of sense.
There we go.
Shea can actually take over into number six next year if he does move up to the year I'm expecting him to have. But here at number seven, we have a player I'm actually surprised isn't higher. It's CJ McCollum. He is nothing but consistent on that Portland team. Somehow that Portland team gets zero respect. None.
Yeah, I mean, originally when you hear his name, like you said, it's a surprise to think he'd be seventh at his position because you not only know he's one of the best shooters in the league, but he's been one of the most consistent threats over the last 5 years. I don't think there's been a year that he hasn't had at least 22 points per game over the last 5 years. I could be wrong. And it just feels like every single game you know what you're going to get from CJ McCollum. Not a guy who chokes under the pressure. Obviously, the perfect number two to Damian Lillard. And it's a guy who easily could find himself in the top five, but because it's such a deep position and the things some of the other guys do are so key, that's really what sets himself apart. And I guess the fact that Damian Lillard maybe is on the team and he loses a bit of steam versus a guy like Zach,
That's definitely.
yeah, who definitely gets to run up kind of the stat line around it. Because there's no saying that CJ couldn't have a stat line or better than Zach LaVine. Just at this point, because he doesn't, I would say that's the only reason he falls so hard.
I couldn't agree with you more. If we're talking about talent, I think CJ is probably more talented than someone like Zach LaVine.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
what to me, CJ, he's probably the second best mid-range shooter in the NBA, right behind DeMar DeRozan. He's really, really good in the mid-range. He's lethal. So to me, he's like a DeMar DeRozan, who can shoot a three-pointer. He might not be lights out at a three-pointer. He's not going to be Kyle Korver or Joe Harris out there, but he can still shoot it at league average or above league average in most years. He does average just over 20 points per game. The only reason the main reason I think he is behind a player like Zach LaVine, though, like you mentioned, being behind Damian Lillard takes a lot of opportunities away. CJ's definitely plays similar to a point guard role as well, so it's kind of difficult to have that many touches going to the guards. But on top of that, it's just hasn't shown the success that they need to show in the last couple of years. It seems like Damian Lillard is one of the best players in this league. He shows it day in and day out, and yet Portland's not a top team. It seems like CJ McCollum, day in and day out, produces, and he does. And they both played fairly good defense. We consider them probably the best backcourt in the league right now.
Oh, definitely the best one-two punch for sure.
But where's that bringing them? It's not like they have a bad front court either. Last year they had a Whiteside, and the Whiteside's not really doesn't exactly put up stats, but they might be empty to team success. But they have a pretty good front court. They have pretty good wings. They're led by the best backcourt in the league. CJ McCollum's an amazing player, an amazing shooter. He's a prototypical shooting guard, but they just can't get it done. So that lack of team success, and even when they do make the playoffs, that lack of being able to make it past the first round is why he's that low for me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, I wouldn't say that they necessarily have a lack of team success because if you do look, so CJ McCollum won the most improved player in 2015, 2016. And if you look at the years after that, they finished the eighth the year after that, which definitely seems justified. Then they finished eighth this year, but the 2 years in between that, they finished third in the conference in both years. And one of those 2 years, they did make the conference finals, and they just ran into the Warriors. So it's like it's not a team that can't win in the playoffs. It's just a team that runs into a lot of good teams. I feel like they shouldn't have got swept by the Pelicans a few years ago in the playoffs. That's something that was just disastrous. But in terms of being able, I think, to go to the conference finals 2 years ago, Damian Lillard hitting that shot over Paul George. I hate to take away the
That's
fire from
a couple
McCollum.
years ago now, though.
Yeah, it's only 2 years ago though. That's one playoff run that didn't go good for them, and that was also the bubble. I think when it comes to winning games in the playoffs, both of them are just absolute killers. But I agree that McCollum's lack of getting over the hump in terms of being a really good player versus a superstar is just what keeps him here. Because like Portland, they're a really good team, but they don't seem to find themselves in the top 5 in terms of contenders.
So to me, I think if you're talking about how they've had a great team success, they're coming off of a year where they had a losing record in in an NBA where a winning record can be had pretty much anywhere. Almost every team around them and underneath them are teams that are rebuilding right now. They're building off of young people. They're up and comers. They're not a team that's getting older and older every year and not going anywhere. This team's pretty much maxed out. With CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard leading the team, they are a potential top 5 contender, yes, any given year. But like last year, it's not like CJ and Dame were hurt. They played. CJ played every single game. And I know that if your other guys are hurt, like Nurkic was hurt, sure, that makes you lose a couple more games. But you were 4 games under 500. In a different sport, in baseball, if you're not at 600, you're not making the playoffs. Like, Portland's not going to be a serious threat at 34 and 39.
No,
And I just don't. Like, I see that CJ and Dame might be a little overrated in that sense. That's why, for me, I had Shea, and I actually had CJ at 9th place in my list.
you have to think about it too, though, where in the last 5 years, again, they do have 2 conference finals appearances. And how many other people on these lists can we say that about? Not a lot. So you can't judge team success based off last year.
Make the playoff.
What do you mean?
Make the playoffs.
What do you mean? They have 2 conference finals appearances in the last 5 years.
Make the playoffs right now.
They
Last year they were not a very good team, and that was
they made the playoffs. They finished 8th in the conference. They've made the playoffs every single year since CJ McCollum has been the most improved player. And the only time that they lost in the first round twice. Once was to the Warriors whenever they had their Splash Brothers year, and the other time was to the Lakers this year. We're again losing to the Los Angeles Lakers in this year's playoffs. Is that a shame? Like, no, they've never
but like
playoffs with either of these guys. I agree.
I mean, have a winning record. Have a winning record.
Again, that's 1 year. They finished 3rd 2 years ago. They finished 3rd the year before that as well. So like they had
other teams are getting better, and they're not getting better. They're getting worse.
I don't think they got worse. They got Robert Covington, they got Carmelo, and Nurkic is going to be healthy. They didn't get worse.
Lost Whiteside. Carmelo's getting older. That Collins not the player he once was. Nurkic was still coming off an injury. We don't know what he can prove. I don't see them contend. I don't see them winning a championship.
Hey, we'll save this for our season preview discussion, but obviously back to CJ. Yeah,
CJ's still a great player. He's offensively, he's DeMar DeRozan who can shoot a 3-pointer.
Yeah, that pretty much justifies him with the spot he's in. He's not going to fall out of the top 10. And
No,